Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by again for our weekly Wednesday night live stream. 8 p.m. as always, we're here. We'll be here till about 10:30 probably, talking some of the big stories in politics this week. We'll be taking your questions and comments and going from there. It'll just be me tonight. Brianna won't be able to join because she is working tonight. She's super busy this last week or so she's catching up. She might still find the time occasionally to chirp me off screen, so get ready for that, or maybe she'll chirp me in the comments, but for the most part, it'll just be me tonight. Samantha Sider has already put it, the squad is back bigger and better than ever. Certainly the case, as I noted in my video last night on Ilhan Omar. Not only did all four members of the squad, return to Congress. I mean, Ayanna Pressley didn't have a primary, but the three that did have primaries all won their primaries, all increased their margins of victory, all, won fairly handily, right? Like Ilhan Omar, for instance, despite being massively outspent, ended up increasing her margin of victory by like 10%, and ended up getting more votes in raw votes for this election, despite it being a with the shutdown, right? Like it was a smashing victory for Ilhan Omar, and for Rashida Tlaib and for AOC and for all of those progressives. And of course, in addition to that, you also have the victories of Cori Bush, of Mondaire Jones, of Jamal Bowman. You have the close ones like Charles Booker and Jessica Cisneros. Like there were more than a few close calls. You have Kara Eastman as well, who's got a chance of winning her seat. I believe is it North Dakota or Nebraska? I think it's Nebraska, actually. Excuse me. So the squad is growing, and it has the potential to grow further. And as I've been noting, the first time you go, right, the first time you run a primary, the reality is that you're seen as vulnerable, right? Like AOC was always safe in my view, but like the narrative was, oh, these are rookie congresswomen, they could lose, right? They could lose their districts, and they have to be careful. And all three of them worked really hard and again expanded their vote totals. And I wonder now, and not to say that they shouldn't, be careful, but I wonder now if they've sort of locked themselves in, into this particular, their districts, right? They've shown that they can win, that they can expand their base, that they can, in many cases, raise big money. AOC is one of the biggest fundraisers, right? It's a great sign. It's a great sign. And I wonder now, next cycle, are they really going to bother pumping as much money to stop Ilhan Omar as they did, knowing that it could basically be a waste? Like, they wasted millions of Republican and Democratic Party elite dollars to try to turf Ilhan Omar, and she won by like 20 points. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but she was up by about 20, in the last debate, right? She was up by about 20, or when I saw them, and it's a smashing victory. And so, I think that's huge. But I mean, the first thing tonight I want to talk about, and this is something that that was kind of like caught my attention when we were about to start, which is that, we're starting to get the details about the convention, right? We're starting to get the details about the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, and who's going to be speaking. We already knew that, but also like what people are going to get in terms of actual screen time. And it turns out that AOC is only being given 60 seconds. Now, to me, that's absurd, right? 60 seconds, right? I get it. I get that there's a lot of speakers. I get that the schedule is really packed. I get that with it being, totally online now, maybe things are even harder to organize. I get all that, 100%. And I get that AOC shouldn't expect 30 minutes or anything like that. But the idea that you're going to give one of the brightest, most ambitious, most influential young congresspeople in the whole country, that she represents a racialized community that the party needs to do better in, that there's not a whole lot of Latino and Latina speakers on the schedule, and that Brianna Gray Joy was tweeting out that, or Brianna Joy Grace, excuse me, was tweeting out that there was only 2 people on the schedule under 50, AOC being one of them. And so you're going to say that one of the people under 50 on the schedule is only going to literally get a minute? What does that say about how Biden, Harris, the party establishment, what does it say about the party that they want to put forward? They want young people's votes. They want Latino votes. They want progressive votes. But when it comes to people like AOC, they're going to give her 60 seconds to basically send in a pre-recorded clip and say, okay, fine. You wanted AOC on the schedule, you bunch of stupid progressives. Here's AOC. Technically, we've checked off the box. And now you can't complain. You have AOC on the schedule. What more do you want? And of course, in 60 seconds, what is she going to say? She can't really say anything. She has to basically go totally boilerplate because she can't, take a longer speech to balance criticisms of Biden and Harris and of the party with the potential, which is what any nuanced progressive would do, right? And should do. There should be no, one-dimensional praise of Biden and Harris. There should be none of that. There should be none of that at all. And so, I don't know, they're kind of setting her up for a rushed speech. And I think it's so telling that at a convention where they're going to have so many neoliberal hacks, they're going to have so many has-beens, they're going to have Epstein Express frequent flyer, Bill Clinton, on the schedule. They're going to have John Kasich, anti-labor, anti-choice, anti-LGBTQ Republican John Kasich on the schedule. And they can't find more than 60 seconds for AOC. You couldn't give her 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I get it. She's a junior congresswoman. I get that. But 5 minutes? Really, guys? 5 minutes? Right? I'm not sure about Kasich's time yet. Let me look this up. I'm going to look this up. 1 second. AOC. 60 seconds. Okay, so if we look here, let me look at the article. I don't know if the article I read has Kasich on it. Not to my knowledge. But the point is that even if he's also getting 60 seconds, and my belief is that he's likely getting more than that, even if he got the same, what you're saying to the party, what you're saying to the country, what you're saying to young people who are maybe on the fence about this whole Joe Biden thing is, hey, we value the voice of an anti-choice, anti-worker, anti-LGBTQ Republican exactly the same that we do one of the youngest, biggest fundraising, most influential young congresswomen not only now, but just she's one of the most influential young congresspeople in ever, right? It's rare that young congresspeople have this sort of impact right away. She was already the youngest woman ever elected and one of the youngest people ever elected to Congress. And then unlike some of those people, she's had a massive impact. Right? So from from my perspective, this shows a fundamental disrespect, and it's clearly being done to put her on the schedule to be able for neoliberals on Twitter and in the press to say our convention reflected the diversity of the Biden coalition. On the one side, you had Republicans that can't support Donald Trump like John Kasich, and then on the other, you have, diehard progressives like Bernie Sanders and AOC, and we represent a broad swath of reasonable Americans. That's going to be the narrative that the Biden camp and the DNC is going to push. But it's not really passing the smell test if AOC gets like 2 minutes, 1 minute, literally 1 minute, right? Like, it seems so odd to me that they thought this would be good. I don't know. I get it. A lot of people in the party don't want her to speak. I get that. On the other side of this, there are people that are like, no, we like, if they could have beaten her, they would have wanted to. I get it. But Biden is weak with a few groups of people. He's weak with progressives. He's weak with young people. I know young people are vastly more likely to vote for him than Trump. But despite that, young people hate Biden. And he's weak with Hispanic voters. And even if none of those groups are really going to respond to Biden's weaknesses and then go vote for Trump, because I don't really see that. Basically no one in my viewership who's like, I'm never voting Biden, is going to go vote for Trump. They're either not voting, or they're voting green, or they're writing in someone, or they're voting for some other party or idea or whatever, but they're not going to Trump. And that's the issue. Like, if you want to reach young people, Latinos, and progressives, I can't think of one person other than Bernie, who is on the schedule, that can actually help you bring all three in one speaker. Give her more than 5 minutes. Right? Like, give her more than 5 minutes. An absolutely absurd, absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. Another thing that's been happening is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that pick's been announced. We've done a bit of coverage. One thing to kind of look at is that, Wall Street seems pretty happy. Wall Street seems very happy in a lot of ways. Stock markets certainly didn't react negatively, and a lot of analyst firms, forecasting firms, suggested that with the Kamala Harris pick, it's a clear sign that Biden's not really going to make a hard shift to the left. Like, he's going to be different than Trump. If you elect a Democrat, it's going to be different than a Republican. There are going to be some differences. But on the whole, it's basically a sign to big business that things are going to basically be relatively status quo. And that you don't need to worry all that much. And that if Biden wins, you don't really need to change too much come January. And Kamala Harris is another sign in that. Right? Kamala Harris is another sign of that reality. Whereas, again, if he was to, even if picked, forget Nina Turner, but if he was to pick Barbara Lee or Karen Bass, I don't think Karen Bass especially is necessarily as progressive as people were painting her to be. She's not very clear on Medicare for All, for instance. She's on the Medicare for All coalition. She's in the caucus, but I don't know if I necessarily, view her as a diehard progressive. But if you picked her, there'd at least be questions. But we kind of know who Kamala is. She's not a right-wing Democrat. In the Democratic Party, she's not on the right. She's probably a bit more to the center left than Joe Biden. But she's ultimately going to be a very good servant to neoliberal capitalism. And I think that she's there to help push Joe Biden's vision for the country. Right? And if you want to look specifically, this was very interesting. This is a tweet I found on social media just before we started. Let me bring this up here. So, great tweet here. This was 7 hours ago. Prison stocks were up quite a bit. when Kamala Harris was announced. As we know, given roughly when it was, I'll just put a link in the description here. You can see it right here. Link in the description. You can see here that Core Civic Inc. After hours yesterday, when it was sort of announced kind of late in the day that Kamala Harris would be the pick. Market trading largely done. Huge spike, basically up massively. 5%. That's pretty significant. And not gradually over the day, but a large spike. Because Kamala Harris knows where her bread is buttered. And her bread is buttered with the prison industrial complex. It's how she became Attorney General. And then it's how she became a senator. And then that's how she became, Vice President or the nominee. And may well become Vice President. And given what we know about Joe, right? Like, she may well become president. She has higher odds, I would say, than most of the recent vice presidents of actually becoming president. Because it's been a while, it used to be often like George Bush was vice president and senior and then became a president. And then, Johnson, obviously, and then, for a while, I think Nixon, I thought he served as a vice president. I'm not sure. I forget. But the point is, she's got a good chance of becoming president. And I think that a lot of people are saying, okay, the prison industrial complex likes her. And it's as I noted in my, I believe we divested Sinistoria. I believe Charlie Angus was a big pusher there. To basically get the CPP divested. I don't know if we're fully yet or if it's in the process of becoming, but I do know that he made a big push to get rid of that. And I look, the CPP, it shouldn't be interfered with by politicians on a daily basis. It should be there to get returns for Canadians. But there should be limits to that. And I think that investing in private prisons is well past the line of acceptability. Yeah, so a lot of VPs have gotten to be president, but it's been a bit of time. I mean, unless Biden does it, it's been a while. I think that, she's got a great chance to become president. Really does. And then, the prison industrial complex loves her. We saw, you guys, I don't know if you saw my video, last night, but Donald Trump, on 2 occasions, and then Ivanka Trump on an additional occasion, between 2011 and 2014, donated thousands of dollars to Kamala Harris when she was running to be reelected as Attorney General in California. Right? It's definitely them. It's like, the names are exact. It's the employer listed as the Trump Organization. Things like that. And a lot of people on the one hand are saying, oh, this is a nothing burger. Trump gives to everybody. But why does Trump give to everybody, if that's true? He gives to everybody because he knows that politicians that get big checks from billionaires tend to do things for those billionaires. And so the question was, and still is, why does Donald Trump give money to Kamala Harris? What does he want from her? Or what had he seen from her that he liked and he wanted to reward and keep happening? Because by then she was running for re-election, so she had a record, right? She's got a record to run on. And to me, the question, the reality is that she's soft on white collar crime. Like, that has to be the answer. She's soft on white collar crime. That fundamentally she doesn't take the opportunities to really throw the book at, whether it's Steve Mnuchin or whether it's the big banks. She's never really taken the opportunity to really fundamentally hammer home that big business shouldn't be getting away with all that they're getting away with. And that when they find themselves on the other side of the law, Kamala Harris is like, well, I feel for you guys. I actually think that, I'm going to help you out. I like me some corporate capital. But we know Kamala Harris was awful to people, regular people, working class people, black people, trans people who needed justice and weren't getting it. Awful to them. Cori Bush put out a really good tweet today. There was a really good interview with Cori Bush. And I want to read you some of this, where she explains her complicated views on Kamala Harris. And I'm just going to link you this tweet chain here so you guys can check it out. And get a real sense for what's happening here, right? So, for instance, you see that... Let me pull up the tweet here. Okay, so you see what she says here. I'm not going to tear down another woman of color. I just didn't agree with a lot of the things she had done in her past. As a progressive, I have to stand with my progressive values. So I stand with our elder black women who are excited to witness this. I stand with them and I get it. But I also stand with our Latinx community. I stand with our trans community. So what she's referring to there, of course, is that, Kamala Harris, whether it was black people, Latino people, trans people, did not respect fundamental human rights while she was Attorney General. She used slave labor. She didn't allow trans people to express their gender identity within the justice system. And much like African Americans, it depends from community to community, but Latino people are often overrepresented as well within the justice system. She says, I stand with those who are formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated. I stand with our single parents, our poorer families, especially those who have had to deal with truancy issues. And I stand against the private prison system. Again, what Cori Bush is saying is, look, I get some people are excited about Kamala Harris, but she took the side of private prisons, at least she did in the past. She's taken the side of, putting kids in jail, jailing kids, punishing their parents and children through the justice system because of what are clearly social issues, right? And I think that's such a crucial point. She says, I stand with the poor because what Cori Bush realizes and Kamala Harris refuses to acknowledge, and in many ways Kamala Harris is pushed up against the idea sometimes, that really poverty is the main driver of crime. AOC has noted this. That's why Ted Yoho called her the F&B word. Because she said, what causes poverty more than anything, at least poverty from regular people, or crime, is poverty. Crime from rich people, it's almost like their wealth perpetuates more crime. But that's another story. So she says here, and this is the crucial quote, I applaud her for the way that she has evolved, but people were hurt while she was figuring out how to evolve. And we cannot forget that those people matter. I stand with them and I want them to know I will represent them as hard as I can. And that is one of the best tweets. Now, I don't know if people necessarily agree that Kamala Harris has even evolved. I don't know if I do. I don't really think she has. At least not sufficiently. So Cori Bush has done a great job. She's not denying that this is exciting for some people. She's probably not. She's probably gonna vote for Biden Harris, but she's saying that look, this is not Harris being chosen is not a celebration for all marginalized people. There are a lot of people who were harmed by Kamala Harris, and by Harris's actions are still being harmed to this day. And we have to remember those people, even if you're voting for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Right? Simple as that. Simple as that. I really think that Cori Bush is going to be a really good representative of the left in Congress. I hope she can win her seat again. I know it was kind of close, not that close, but close enough that she's probably going to get a rough challenge next time. But the fact of the matter is that she's come out and really said, look, Kamala Harris, like, it isn't really that good. And we should acknowledge that. And I think that's great. A lot of people are saying the black community is not going to vote for her. Look, I'm not in the black community. The question, so, I mean, I can't make that answer. I'd have to read a lot, and I'd have to look at some polling and maybe look at a good amount of polling. The question really is going to be, that, what's turnout like? It doesn't, like, look, you're not going to see an influx of black voters go to Donald Trump and Mike Pence. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. It's not. Question is, can they get more turnout? Is there going to be more turnout among black voters this time than last time? And I have to say that there could well be. Because Kamala Harris is a cop, yeah, but, like, she's probably more exciting to marginalized people, even if on image alone, than Tim Kaine. Remember, Hillary didn't lose by a whole lot. She didn't lose by a whole lot. You know? Irene notes here, says, happy that you were talking about Harris and her stance. We need more channels like you. Thank you. Irene, thank you so much. Look, my view in general is that we should not lie for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, right? We should not lie for them. And this is something that I really think we need to focus in on with the left. You're going to hear a lot of people say, reasonably so, I think this is reasonable. You don't have to agree, but I think it's reasonable that, like, look, we got to get rid of Donald Trump. Biden and Harris are the option to do that. We should vote for them. Fine. Again, not everyone here is going to agree with that. Not everyone's going to agree. But that's a reasonable point. Just like I think it's reasonable to say, look, I'm a person that was harmed by the policies of Biden and Harris. I cannot vote for them. Also reasonable. But what is unreasonable, and I think, damaging to the left, is to suggest that we need to stop talking negatively, even constructively within negative, even offering constructive criticism of Biden and Harris. And that's where I draw an absolute line. Never. I will never lie for Biden and Harris. And I'm not going to lie by omission either. Doesn't mean I'm going to cover every one of their scandals. Doesn't mean I'm going to cover them and say they're the equivalent of Trump, because they're not. Trump's far worst. I really do believe he's far worst. You saw his tweet today about Cory Booker. Check that video out when you guys have the opportunity after the stream. He basically says that Cory Booker is going to invade, and black people are going to invade the neighborhoods of middle-class white people. It's a level of racism that not even Joe Biden believes in. At least maybe he did in the 70s, but he doesn't anymore. So I get it, but I'm not going to lie for Joe Biden. I'm not. So people are like, oh, you gotta stay quiet on Joe Biden so you don't hurt him for Trump. Well, first of all, like I got like 30,000 subscribers. Anything I talk about, if it becomes a big story, it's because other bigger people on YouTube and in mainstream media have talked about it. So there's that. So you can't make the case that I'm platforming an issue, but it's mostly that the argument I've been hearing from some left channels, and I don't disagree with it fully, is that it's better to fight Biden than Trump after November. Now, the argument after 2016 and it maybe wasn't a bad argument, was that, we need to, if Trump wins, it's going to expose the naked flaws of the electoral system. It's going to expose capitalism. It's going to expose American imperialism, all to such a cartoonish degree that no one else is going to be able to ignore it. And then we will win in 4 years. And so it was like Trump for 4 years, but then Bernie for 8. And American politics is different forever. Right? That was an argument some people made. But what happened was the exact opposite. Biden was able to win because Trump scared older Democratic voters in particular. And nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not judging. Like, people made their decisions. Scared older voters in particular, and said you have to pick Grandpa Biden, to stop the orange man. Orange man bad. Orange man is bad. But, it became this all-encompassing focus. Even as Bernie's policies were more popular. So, from my viewpoint, it very much was the case that the exact opposite happened. And so, I think we might actually have opportunities if Biden and Harris win, because people forget. People sort of forget this. Bernie's 2015-2016 campaign and the Occupy movement, those really didn't happen under Trumpian regimes. They happened because people saw a supposedly left-wing president do F all for working class people, and then they got really pissed. And they said, actually, we need something different. And so the Bernie movement started not as a reaction to Trump, but as a reaction to Obama and his failures and the failures of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, the generations of right-wing Democrats. And so I do think there are opportunities for the left if Biden and Harris win. But I definitely also think that you gotta start criticizing them now. None of this BS, frankly, that I'm seeing from Bernie even, that, I'm so excited, Kamala's going to be great, they're going to help me fight the big capitalists, and we're going to build this left-wing America together, and Joe's a good guy, and Joe's going to be the most progressive. No, F that noise. Say what Nina Turner has said. One is half a bowl of the S word, one is a whole bowl of the S word. I know it's better to have the former than the latter. I'm going to work my tail off to defeat Donald Trump because he's bad, but don't you dare think for a second I'm endorsing anything that Harris and Biden are doing. Because what you're doing is you're going to give them all of this unearned goodwill. So what's going to happen now, because some progressives have been praising Biden and Harris, for the last weeks and months with Biden, but Harris just started because she's the new VP nominee, is now they're expecting that the people who listened to them for the past 5 months, by November or whatever, are now going to just instantly start listening to you when you start criticizing them on day one of the Biden presidency. They're going to think you're disingenuous and cynical because you sound like it. You have to start going at Biden and Harris now. You have to start going at them now. They are better than Trump and Biden. They are better than Trump and Pence. 100%. I don't need any nuance mongering. They're just better. They're better on pretty much every issue. There's nothing wrong admitting that. But that's where progressive endorsements should end for Biden and Harris. If you must actually praise something they've done, which is without lying. Rashida Tlaib put out a note, congratulating Kamala Harris. But she noted 2 specific things. They worked to help improve water access, and they worked on a couple specific policies. Fine, that's good. Because on isolated issues, you can say Kamala Harris has been okay. She has voted with Bernie. She's backing the Bernie Ed Markey bill for a $2,000 universal stimulus. Fine. But don't go out and say she's a legendary fighter for working class people and she understands the need for racial justice. Those are lies. Because she doesn't. She doesn't. Before I forget, I just want to drop a link to the Discord. If people want to check that out, check out the Discord. It's a great place to keep in touch over the week, between the streams. A lot of great discussion about, about my videos, but also just other things going on in the world. We have a section for memes and things like that, so do check it out. Do check it out. So, that's my view. Leslie with the dancing pair, the exercising pair, saying, "You are amazing." Leslie, thank you for your support. I very much appreciate it. I love those little pairs. Joseph Mangano saying, "Hey, what's up?" Filling in for John Barlich. Yeah, John must not be here tonight. I haven't seen him in the comments, at least. Maybe he's working, but Joseph, thank you for that, and thank you for the support as well. But the reality is, you have to keep pushing now. You have to keep pushing now. Making this about, just lying about, them is only going to hurt progressives. 100%. Let me see. I had a couple other things. One other thing. Now, this might be the most important story of the night. I want to talk a bit about this. Trump's lawyer, Jenna Ellis, came out and basically tried to make fun of Marge Simpson and Kamala Harris, saying about 3 hours ago, and she's basically getting ratioed. She said here, Kamala sounds like Marge Simpson. And I think that she's trying to say that Marge Simpson is annoying or something, and Marge Simpson deserves to be mocked. But guys, I gotta say that Marge Simpson's pretty cool, actually. Marge Simpson in some of the earlier seasons can be a bit of she could be a bit of a moralizer. She tries to get cartoons canceled because they're too violent. I remember that, but Marge Simpson fundamentally is a decent person. Is fundamentally a decent person. And I think that there's this misunderstanding there. And conservatives, I don't know why they're going after Marge. It's almost like Barbara Bush when she went after Marge 30 years ago and Marge had to write her open letter. The writers of The Simpsons wrote a letter in Marge's voice to the First Lady. And now you have this happening all over again. And some people were noting on The Simpsons, or on Twitter, that, Marge, like Kamala Harris, was a cop. But Marge was only a cop for one episode. And if you recall, at the end of that episode, Marge resigned from the police force because it was so corrupt. So Marge was a cop and then did the most heroic thing a cop could ever do. Stop being one. Right? If you want to talk, what's the greatest thing a cop can do to protect society? Not be a cop. And that's what Marge did. That's what Marge did. Right? So, Marge is a fundamentally sympathetic figure. She's a fundamentally kind figure. She represents the challenges of working class women. Kamala Harris does not remind me of Marge Simpson in any shape or form, but it's such an interesting attack that people think that going after Marge Simpson or comparing someone to Marge Simpson is gonna make them is gonna make people hate Kamala Harris. When in actuality, I think a lot of people, if they believe that, would likely see an improvement in their viewpoint of Kamala Harris. Another thing that's going to be really interesting with Kamala Harris, and this is something I'm looking forward to seeing more about, because it'll be fascinating. Is how do her recent policies play in with Biden? Because Biden, at least as of yet, hasn't really acknowledged anything. Biden basically, like, he's basically said, like, no comment. But a lot of people have been asking Biden, say, hey, Kamala Harris, she supports a $2,000 a month payment to everybody, a $2,000 monthly stimulus. She's co-sponsoring that bill with Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey, right? And that bill, that legislation, is something that Bernie has been pushing for since the start of this whole crisis, right? It's something that he's been consistently on. And so the question for Biden now is, hey, Mr. Biden, do you actually support this? When Kamala Harris voted for Medicare for All in the Senate, like, what does that vote mean for Biden? Like, what does that vote mean? And so I think that, like, as David Dole just noted on social media, or noted earlier today, excuse me, like, she basically, like, they said every major media outlet is focused solely on Kamala Harris's identity. Even that she's, like, the first VP from, like, a Western state. But has anyone ever asked what she might bring in terms of addressing an eviction crisis, mass inequality, and millions without health care? And so everyone's been focusing on identity. And I'm not saying you should ignore identity. Identity matters. But there hasn't been a deep dive on what Kamala Harris actually believes in. Right? What does she actually believe in? And I'm not sure we have, like, a lock, stock, and barrel answer. On the one hand, if you look at, like, Senate voting record websites, she's ranked as one of the more progressive senators. But the problem with that is that a lot of votes are yes-no votes. And they're very much, like, no-brainers in a lot of ways. So, like, it's like, do you support, like, banning immigration, which, like, a Republican will put through, and then Bernie and Kamala both vote no, and then they're cast as having equal positions, right? So I think that it's helpful to note that, unlike Tim Kaine, she seems to be a bit closer to the left of the Senate caucus than the right. But what's that going to actually play out in terms of her legislative priorities? And I think that we're not getting that yet. We're totally not getting that. I mean, even here in Canada, the whole discussion about Kamala Harris is, don't you know that she spent some time here in Canada? Don't you know that, for a while she lived in Canada and she went to high school in Montreal, and isn't that so cool? Not a lot of talk about her time as Attorney General. Not a lot of talk about how she hasn't been all that clear on Medicare for All. Not even really a lot of talk about how, she said she believed Biden's accusers back in 2019. What about now? Does she still believe Tara Reade? Does she still believe all those other women who had less serious accusations than Tara Reade, but serious nonetheless? Right? Yeah, I guess Peggy and I were on the same wavelength. I mean, Peggy's asking, like, how does this get more votes? And the answer is, I don't know. In terms of expanding the base, this isn't the pick to do it. Like, neither to the right nor the left. Kamala Harris is not going to be the kind of pick that brings in moderate Republicans. The moderate Republicans that are already with Biden, or that aren't voting for Trump, are already with Biden. That's like the Lincoln Project people, right? Like the Lincoln Project people, the Conways and the David Frums and these types. They're already in. Kamala Harris isn't going to make those people leave. It's not going to bring any more of them. Kamala Harris is also not going to bring in the left. Right? I don't think, however, it's going to shrink his base either. I think the argument is that if you're on the left and you are already planning to vote for Biden, like you had already, said like, God damn it, I'm going to vote out of a harm reduction. I don't know if Kamala Harris really costs Biden your vote, because, and I don't want to assume for everyone, but I sort of think that when people were thinking about Biden's VP, Kamala Harris was the default. Maybe Amy Klobuchar for a while, but Kamala Harris was the default pick, in my view, to be the nominee. I don't know if they're going to lose people. The question is, and this is where it's like new voters won't be from beyond the base. This is a move to excite and energize African Americans and professional women who I think are going to like Kamala Harris. I think she's going to appeal to some of those women that used to vote Republican, educated women, but have over the since Trump especially, but gradually over the decades, have become more and more Democratic. And Kamala Harris, as a mother, but somebody who's very accomplished, you can say what you want about her, the woman is an accomplished, professional, competent woman. You can say that her competency led to millions suffering, and you wouldn't be wrong, but like a lot of people can see like something to aspire to in Kamala Harris in terms of like her professional accomplishments. She's a woman that, for lack of a better term, had it all. She could do it. She could have both the family and the career, right? And so I think that the gambit is shore up those new educated white women that don't vote for Republicans anymore, and also get more black people to vote. Now, some people are noting here, and again, guys, look, I don't speak for the black community. On the one hand, I guarantee you, some people are very excited for Kamala Harris being the nominee. I guarantee you, they don't care about her incarceration record. They do not care. She is black, and they want another black person in the White House. Representative politics work for some people. I guarantee you that matters. Especially if you're part of the black middle class. Because Kamala Harris represents you more than she represents working class people of any background, including her own backgrounds. My concern is, then again, you might say, look, are you really going to get record black turnout? You don't even need record black turnout, but decent black turnout on a Kamala Harris type. Certainly, she is an African American woman, but she was a prosecutor. She locked up black people and got paid handsomely to do it. Barack Obama, again, not to romanticize Obama, but Obama was a college professor and a community organizer. And again, I'm not suggesting that Barack Obama was a saint or even that good. But Barack Obama wasn't a police officer. Barack Obama wasn't a security guard. Barack Obama wasn't a prosecutor. Barack Obama wasn't a private prison manager. He wasn't in any of the professions that are directly associated with the suppression of black rights and dignity. And she was. Right? So I think, Tyson, Tyson makes the point where he thinks there's going to be massive turnout. I think turnout will be up. And that's why I think ultimately the Democrats will win. I think Biden's going to win. I do. I wasn't sold when they picked him. I thought it was a disaster. But Trump has just gotten worse and worse and worse. His attacks have become more and more unhinged. they keep trying to convince people that Joe Biden is actually Bernie Sanders, and no one believes that. And certainly anybody that's not already a diehard QAnon or Trump supporter, right? Like, no one believes that. And no one believes that Kamala Harris is Bernie Sanders. And so I think he's going to win. And one of the reasons I think he's going to win, one of the reasons is that, you know, fundamentally, you know, turnout's going to be a bit higher. Again, the reason Hillary Clinton lost, you could say there's lots of reasons why, but in an election as close as hers, one of the reasons is turnout among young people and African Americans was lower than it was under the Obama years. For the Obama years, during the Obama years, black people had higher turnout rates than white people. Right? And to elect Barack Obama. And Hillary Clinton didn't need to do that good. She didn't need to have the same level of turnout. But she needed to not tank it. And she did tank it. And so what happened was Hillary Clinton, who won the popular vote, got way less votes than both Mitt Romney did and John McCain did. And so her primary loss was based on her inability to get people to vote. And so the question will be, is the hatred of Donald Trump, which is high, and the excitement for a black woman VP, which I think is at least somewhat there, going to be enough on its own to win? And it might be. It might be. And again, there is the risk that some black people don't trust Kamala Harris. But the question is going to be, if black people like Kamala more than they like Hillary, and I think they might, then I think that ultimately it'll be a net positive for the ticket. Like, yeah, like, people forget this, but if you look at like 2008 presidential election, right, which to be fair was a high turnout election, in that election Barack Obama got 69 million votes. Nice. John McCain 59 million votes. Like, the rounding. So basically, McCain got 60, Obama got 69. 50. And Obama got about 53% of the vote. In 2012, turnout was lower. 3.5 points lower. Obama won. He got about 66 million votes. Romney, 61 million. So Romney got 61 million votes and lost in 2012. In 2016... you know, Hillary Clinton only got 65 million votes. She got fewer votes than Barack Obama did, and came very close. And so, for example, Trump got like less votes, or basically the same amount of votes as Mitt Romney did in 2012. Turnout was a real issue. Turnout was a real issue. Yeah, Biden signs are an issue, guys. Biden signs are an issue. I don't know. Lawn signs matter. Lawn signs aren't votes, but I don't know if it's as big of a culture thing in the US, but you can get a decent sense in Canada, especially if you live in a part of the country where like people actually have lawns. Like, I live in a, you know, medium-sized city. Kingston's a medium-sized city. So a lot of people live in apartments, but a lot of people, even if they're renters, like rent out like a house or part of a house. So they have a lawn. But like, you can tell like who's going to win in Kingston, the NDP or the Liberals. Those are the two parties that can win here based on the amount of signs. Like, it was very clear we were going to win in 2018 here in Ontario, in Kingston, because our guy had just a massive sign lead over the Liberals. In my part of town especially, but I live near a bunch of students and like professors and a bunch of like hippies basically. So my part of town's not representative, but like, you know, the reality is that, you know, you could tell Biden's not putting up signs. I haven't seen too many, or I haven't seen any. I'm in Canada, but like, people have been saying there's not a lot of Biden signs. right? People are saying, I've heard people say, I still see more Bernie signs than Biden signs. Because Bernie people, are still left their signs up. Biden signs nowhere to be found. Now look, does that mean he's going to lose? No. But it does mean that the enthusiasm gap is real. The enthusiasm gap is real. It's definitely the case that Joe Biden doesn't have a lot of enthusiasm right now. Just doesn't. People asking why won't Kingston vote NDP federally? Man, I don't know. Garrettson, for whatever reason, people like him. Makes no sense to me. Much like Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau, he is where he is, not because of his own talents, but because of his father. Actually, Doug Ford as well. I don't know. But yeah, for those who don't know, in Ontario at least, the districts, what we call them ridings, for federal and provincial politics are identical, essentially, through most of the province. So, whereas in some of the smaller provinces, you might have only, say, 10 or 15 seats for the federal government, but you might have 50 seats for the provincial government, it means that your riding federally is going to be much bigger with much more people than your provincial one. But in Ontario, we have a provincial parliament that has the exact same amount of seats, basically, as what we send to the federal parliament. So Kingston and the Islands federally is the same riding as Kingston and the Islands provincially. So people are saying if the NDP can win provincially, they should be able to win federally, but we've never really come close federally. We finished second once in the entire history of the country, and that was actually just in this last election. And it was a distant second. Whereas, provincially, we won here in 1990. We finished second 2 times in a row back in 2011 and 2014, and then also won it in 2018 by more than 10%. Same voters, exact same voting base. See ya, Craig. Everyone say bye to Craig. Thanks, Craig, for all you do for the channel. Very much appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, like, these are questions that a lot of people have about that. And it's like people vote differently at different levels of politics, things like that. Yeah, just reading Twitter right now. A lot of people ain't happy about the AOC getting literally a minute, literally 60 seconds to talk. It's such a ridiculous treatment of AOC, guys. I can't get past it. I know that the party establishment doesn't like her. I know that, but like I can't deal with it. I can't deal with the fact that they thought that like they could just give her a minute and like be like, well, we did our job. Young people, progressives, Latinos, there's your representation. Now, like, leave us alone. I can't believe they thought they would get away with that. I can't believe it. People are asking, Michael, will Kamala get primaried in 2024? Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Yeah, Jean-Luc, yeah, we definitely talk Canadian politics more on the live streams. And again, like, as I've been noting, I am in the process of starting a podcast. I know I've said that for months now, but it is something I'm working towards. And it's something I'm definitely going to do. And that's where I want to focus more on Canadian politics. But, so yeah, feel free to bring Canadian-centered questions on these. And I know a lot of the American viewers like Canadian politics too. It's just whenever I put up a Canadian video, it's lucky if it breaks 1,000 views, and it's just, I have to make content that people want to watch, right? But people say, will Kamala get primaried in 2024? Well, that's an interesting question. First of all, they have to win. They have to win, right? Like, they have to win. If Biden-Harris loses, I would say that it probably really hurts Kamala Harris's career, because now she's the VP that lost to Donald Trump. And even worse than Tim Kaine, I mean, like, Donald Trump, when he was running the first time, didn't have a record to run against. Now he does, and it's an awful record. If you lose this time to Trump, it's even worse. So I would say that, like, you know, operating under the assumption she wins, operating under that, you know, it's going to be an interesting question. A couple scenarios. First scenario is they lose. I don't think she's running in 2024. People aren't gonna vote for her. They win, and say Biden. Ugh, like, and I'm not wishing this on anybody, but say Biden passes away, and she has to become president. Then I don't think she gets primaried. Not effectively, because sitting presidents rarely get primaried in any serious way by their own party. And I get it. It's a bit of an exception because of how she would have become president. Right? That, like, she became president not through the people's vote, but through, you know, Biden resigning or passing away or whatever. I don't think she gets primaried. I don't think so. And, like, so for instance, I don't see, Samantha Satterthwaite says here, 1 minute equals Dem Party knows AOC could run and win in 2024. I think that's a fair point, Samantha, that one of the reasons they're squelching AOC is they knew how important Obama speaking at the DNC was, you know, in the mid-2000s, and how that speech was one of the reasons he became president. And I know that they don't want to give AOC oxygen. Now, I know in nowadays, like with media more decentralized, that speaking slot isn't as important as it used to be, but it's still pretty darn important. And if they gave her a keynote opportunity and she nailed it, it would be trouble for the establishment. It would be. It really would be. Like, if Obama doesn't get that time to speak, maybe he never even runs for president. It was honestly that defining for him, that moment to speak at the convention. I think, what was that, 2004, 2003, whatever it was? You know, you know what I mean? It was a big deal. Now, the reality is that if Biden wins and decides he doesn't want to run again, finishes his whole term, but decides to step aside, I definitely think Kamala Harris is the favorite. But I also feel that she's more susceptible to a primary challenge than a lot of. Well, let me rephrase that. If Biden steps aside, she's going to be seen as the favorite, but there's still a chance to primary her. Then it's more analogous to someone's VP runs for the nomination after they've served. Now, that might mean that a lot of people don't run against her, because you don't want to run and get walloped, because that means that you've shown yourself as weak in the public mindset. And it might be the case that if Biden and Harris are perceived as doing well over their first 4 years, that Kamala Harris being a continuation of the Biden presidency basically means a cakewalk for her. So my viewpoint, what I think is most likely right now, is one, I do think Biden and Harris are going to win. I do. It's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be as a wide a victory as the polls are saying right now. I really don't. But I think they are going to edge it out. And then I think Biden is not going to run in, I don't think Biden's going to run in 2024. I don't think so. So I think Kamala Harris will be running in 2024. And I think she's going to face primary challengers, but I wonder if any of the really big names are going to throw their hat in the ring. Does AOC throw her hat in the ring on a primary challenge in 2024 against a sitting vice president who's running for president? Is that the time to do it? Or does she bide her time? Does she wait for 2028? Now that's the tricky thing again, because if Kamala Harris let's say Biden finishes out his term, then Kamala Harris runs and wins in 2024, then yeah, like any sitting president, she's basically a lock to run again, and Kamala Harris is not old, so she'll be plenty young to do a full 8 years. Kamala Harris will run in 2028 again. So for a lot of people, the calculation is going to be, if Biden does one term, and then Harris runs, you have to primary her because it's either 2024 or 2032. In effect, meaning that if everything goes according to the plan and the Democrats, win these elections, then that's 12 years because you have 2020 to 2024, the Biden presidency, and then 8 years of Kamala Harris. And I don't know if people are going to want that. And then other people are noting maybe it makes more sense for AOC to primary Chuck Schumer to make a run for Senate and to build her senatorial profile. It's a lot easier to make a run for president from the Senate. Very, very rarely do people run for the presidency from the House of Representatives, right? Like, who was the last president to be in the House when they became president? You have a lot of governors, like Bill Clinton, he was a governor. Bush was a vice president. Bush Jr. was a governor. Obama was a senator. Trump's an anomaly, obviously, but Ronald Reagan was a governor. Like Jimmy Carter, governor. Richard Nixon, like, his most recent office was vice president. Like, when was the last... Has a person who's only been in the House been president? Or if they have been, it's been a long time. Getting some trolls here. Blue live, yeah, look, guys, look, everyone's lives matter. Look, when I say that, I'm not being facetious. All lives matter. The problem is they don't now. All lives should matter. And they don't. Black lives don't matter right now. So when people say all lives matter, they don't right now, and that's the problem. Yeah, so the lives of police officers matter. They do. But they don't matter more than the lives of civilians. Yeah, Cloudy makes a good point that it was rare for senators. Governors were often more a likely path. Which makes sense in some ways because a governor has proven that they can be in the executive. Whereas a senator is a legislator, not a member of the executive. But that's a good point. That's a good point. A lot of presidents in a row were governors or vice presidents. Because Bush was a governor, senior. Bill Clinton was a governor. Bush, his father was a vice president. Reagan was a governor. Carter was a governor. A lot of these people were governors, right? So, Nixon was a senator and a member of the House of Representatives. But, let me see. What was Gerald Ford? Gerald Ford was a member of the House. Gerald Ford was only a member of the House. He was a member of the House of Representatives for a long time, actually. He was a member of the House from 49 to 73 from Michigan. Michigan's 5th district. And then basically was House Minority Leader for a lot of that time, and then became President of the United States after Richard Nixon resigned. So he was the last person. Technically, he was Vice President, only for a little bit though. But he was only in the House. Yeah, Trump did shatter a lot of the norms, but did he shatter them or did he just knock them out of place? Again, everyone assumed that, right? Everyone assumed Trump shattered all the norms. And I want to believe that. But if he shattered the norms, then Joe Biden would not be the nominee right now. It wouldn't be. Joe Biden is as sure a sign as any that the norms haven't been shattered, that the vase is shaking, right? The vase is shaking, but hasn't fallen off the pedestal yet. I don't know if Trump shattered the norms. I don't know if I agree. And Macarius39, thank you for the super chat, just reiterating that point. I don't know if I fully agree, personally. I sort of think that it's not necessarily clear yet if the norms have been shattered. Maybe the norms are just going to reestablish themselves. Or maybe they have been, and maybe Biden's the blip. Maybe the norms have been shattered. Biden might get elected again, but Biden is the eye of the hurricane, for lack of a better term. And that, actually, things aren't going back to normal. It's just they tried to do it once with Biden. It failed. And here you go. Things are back to craziness. Tom Cotton 2024 or 2028 or what have you. I mean, H.S. Ross makes a good point. They make a good point. They say, I don't think we can afford to acquiesce to having neoliberal ghouls in charge until 2032 with the climate and ecological emergency being what it is. I think we need a primary from the left in 2024. I think that's a very reasonable point. In a sense, we're sort of in between a rock and a hard place because a lot of people are right in noting that it's hard to build a political movement overnight. That the process of neoliberalism did not happen instantly. And so the cure to it might not also happen instantly. Neoliberalism started in the 1970s, maybe even late 60s, as the welfare state started to be chipped away and as outsourcing started to happen and automation and more anti-union laws were passed in Western nations. And so what happened is that it kind of went into overdrive in the 80s and 90s, but it didn't start there. The roots of what Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney and Jean Chrétien and Bill Clinton did were actually rooted in the 1970s. Right? And so you could make a reasonable argument and say, look, you can't build an AOC presidency overnight. Even Bernie, who came close to winning, he didn't win. It's hard. It takes time, but we don't have time in a lot of ways. You're right. We don't necessarily have a whole lot of time. There's not a lot of time given climate change and given a lot of other issues too, that we need quicker solutions. Cory Bush said, look, incrementalism doesn't work. But the problem with politics, especially U.S. politics, is it's so bogged down. It's so incremental. Elections are staggered. The president runs for 4-year terms. Often a president for one party, if they get to be president once, they often almost in my lifetime, there's only been one president who didn't win re-election, and I was very young at the time. That was, Bush Sr. And then before that, Jimmy Carter. It's very rare a U.S. president loses an election. So often when you're president for 4 years, you're president for 8 years. And so, yeah, that's a great point. I don't know what you can do to rectify that, though, right? Because, look, fundamentally, like, if the politics are what they are, it's going to be really challenging. Right? I don't know. Because, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, look, the victories we're seeing, and I've talked them up, and I'm not being disingenuous, and I don't think I'm wrong in doing so, but, like, the victories we've been seeing, like Bush, Cory Bush, and Jamal Bowman, and Mondaire Joe, and all these types, and the existing squad, like, these are all big victories that are actually making real changes to American politics. But is it too little, too late? Is it enough? Is it actually going to be enough to get the things done needed, not only on climate, maybe especially on climate, but like on all the other things that are life and death for working class and marginalized people? Chip Walter says Trump 50-50 is going to win this. Now, I won't say that. I certainly think Biden's the favorite. But people saying it's over, I don't know. So, like, let me bring up this tweet I shared earlier. This was originally tweeted by Kyle Kalinske. So, most of you probably know who Kyle is. He's, like, one of the biggest left tubers. And so he shared a tweet. I'm going to put a link here to the picture, which does a prediction thing, and it says right now, Gene says, hi, Christo. Did I miss Brianna and Smokey? Smokey was here earlier. Brianna wasn't joining tonight because she has a lot of work to catch up on, so she's not here at the moment. But no, if you see this picture here, which was tweeted by Kyle, this was one of these infographics that says Biden has a 71% chance of winning right now. So based on the polling and all of the other data they use, Biden is given a 71% chance to win. Now, does that number sound familiar to you guys? Because this was 2016. This was 2016. Copy. Yeah, there we go. This was 2016 right here. And in 2016, Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton had a 71% chance of winning as well. Now, could it have been the case that the formulas they used were inaccurate back then? Do they know more now about how Trump's coalition looks like what it looks like, and therefore can better accurately predict Trump's base? Could very well be. It could also be the case that they've leaned things more in favor of Trump to get over certain polling deficiencies. It's also the case now that Trump winning is less of a surprise, and so from a strategic perspective, the Democrats are ready for it. No, I'm not suggesting 2020 is 2016 raw material. I'm not suggesting that. What I am suggesting, though, is some of the metrics today show the exact same percentage of victory chances Biden had, Clinton had over Trump. I'm saying it is a very, very concerning coincidence that if you see those numbers, you're like, oh, geez, the last time I saw 71% chance of beating Trump, it didn't end up well. But no, you're right. And as I noted since I read your comments, that these numbers may be different now because we understand Trump better. And so these simulations might account for the Trump surges that were unaccounted for 4 years ago. Zeno says, do I think the U.S. is doing the best in the world against COVID like Trump says. Absolutely not. No. I can't say they're doing worst in the world, but they're definitely doing the worst among developed nations. Now, there are some European nations, some smaller ones that have higher per capita death rates, like I think Belgium, for instance. But these countries were much nearer the epicenter, like the early epicenters. The US and Canada had way more time to prepare than Europe. And the US has the most cases. They have the most people that have died. They have done an awful job. And one thing you'll note in the US, and I've talked about it on the channel before, is that the US is still not testing nearly enough. Trump will tell you that the reason we have so many people getting it is because we're testing so much. And that's not true. Because in the countries that are testing really, really broadly, you have lower positive rates of testing, if that makes any sense. And so, for instance, in a country like South Korea, their percentage of the percentage of tests that lead to positives are way under 1%, because they're testing everybody, even people that aren't showing symptoms. In the US, they don't test nearly as broadly, so when they do test, they're likely testing somebody who it is assumed has COVID-19. And so, the US is probably doing even worse than it's currently showing. And there's no sign it's going to get better. Because, fundamentally, the US is reopening far too early. Again, people are noting here, I saw a comment, sorry I didn't get to it, but I was in the middle of a thought, about the debates about here in Ontario, about whether it's safe to reopen schools or not. There's a lot of debates. I would say most people think reopening is safe, but with a lot of caveats. Mandatory masks, which they're not for younger children. Mandatory smaller class sizes. Maybe have kids only go 1 week and then another kids go the next, and so you have classes at half size. Hire more substitute teachers and more teachers and rent out spaces so you can have full schedules, but students are divided into groups of no bigger than, say, 10, 15 students. So you can spread out more easily. These are we're not doing these things. And so there's a big debate. But relative to the US, we might be ready to at least try opening schools. Right? In some part, yeah. And like Tyson saying, BC, they're delaying the opening. They're delaying it. Here in Ontario, we're like, our daycare's just reopened. In Ontario, daycare's just reopened. Right? The fact of the matter is, the U.S. is reopening now, and it's not ready. David Dole, again, he did a great video on how students are taking pictures of their hallways, jam-packed as high school hallways often are. Barely anybody wearing a mask. Hundreds of thousands of kids in the next weeks alone are going to get COVID-19 because they're going to school and they're not wearing masks and they're jam-packed and there's no ventilation, or it's like all recirculated air. So it's taking the COVID air and spraying it on you. It's bad. And so as bad as it's been for the US, they are going to continue to get worse and worse and worse because other countries are either opening up they're opening up slower than the US is, or they're opening up at a similar pace, but they've earned the right to do so. Like New Zealand, for instance, has earned the right to open up more freely because they haven't had a case in weeks. Right? John Bartlett said, "Sup, dude." John, great to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Happy to have you here. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna get a glass of water and I will be right back. Thanks, guys. All right, and I am back. Samantha Sider saying, Bree not the water slave tonight. Bree had a hearty chuckle to that one, Samantha. But no, so, like, yeah, the U.S., it's going to continue to get really bad, right? Like, let me look this up. COVID curves by country. If I look up COVID curves by country right now, like the U.S. curve is down, but like let me. So these are just among the top 10 most affected countries, but like the US is down, but like they're not nearly as down as they need to be. Like let me throw this to you guys. I want to copy, drop this right here. Right, like even compared to other highly affected countries, the curve is not dipping as much as it needs to compared to South Africa and other countries. Some countries like Peru, Argentina, the countries that are first getting, that sort of had delayed access, have not yet started to flatten. But you have to compare it to like other countries. Like, so if you look here, well, let me try. I'm trying to find here. It's hard to find like a moving curve, but the reality is the U.S. is failing where a lot of developed nations haven't. Well, yeah, and Raw Material is noting that the U.S. has made so much about how China may be lying about their COVID data, but the U.S. has motivations to do the same. And there has been some instances. There's been curves flattening, quote unquote, since the data reporting has changed, where Trump basically took it away from the former reporting agencies. Now, that could be a coincidence, but it could also just be Trump fudging the numbers to make the curve lower. In a lot of the red states where they've sort of denied the reality of COVID to their peril, you've also seen a big spike in pneumonia. Now, that could be just a comorbidity, or it could be the case that in some areas they're encouraging medical professionals to basically lie and say that somebody who died of COVID died of pneumonia, and therefore it lowers the caseload. And of course, in the U.S., you've had Donald Trump basically say, stop the testing. If we stop the testing, we won't have so many more cases. And there have been instances of local Republican politicians. I've seen some on Facebook, like state house members, like members of like the Ohio State House, basically say, you know, look, we should just stop getting tested. We're being tested. And it's like an invasion of our privacy, and the data is just being used to further government oppression, and we should stop getting tested. So it does. I would not be surprised if the U.S. numbers are even higher. Much like the U.S. is accusing China and other countries of lying, I think you could say the same thing about the U.S. The one thing you could also say about the U.S., which makes it more complicated, is that in certain parts of the country, the data might be way more accurate than in others, because there could be accurate local reporting in some cases. HS asks, you guys might have saw Smokey there. HS asks, can lefties keep organizing people on the ground in the kind of serious way Bernie did in the early states between now and 2024? Can we organize around policy issues and issues at the state level? I mean, I certainly think that's a possibility. And I certainly think that's a necessity in a lot of ways, right? There's clearly an appetite for progressive policy, and I think it's about linking those policies to the people that are actually going to implement them. In the Democratic Party, at least, the policies aren't necessarily the issue for the left, because people made it very clear in this primary that they did not vote for Joe Biden because they love Joe Biden's policy. They voted for Biden because they trust him to defeat Donald Trump. But again, when they did exit poll after exit poll after exit poll of people coming out of Democratic primary voting stations, those people, even in pro-Biden states, were saying, you know, we like Medicare for all. We like a Green New Deal. We voted for a guy that doesn't want those things. Maybe some of them didn't know that. They might have assumed that Biden supported it. Maybe some lower information voters. But many of them said, look, it's not about any of that. It's about stopping Trump. And I just trust Bernie or Biden more to do that than Bernie. And whether that's accurate or not is irrelevant. Enough voters thought it was accurate, and that's what mattered. And so what I think is, honestly, like, the policies are already popular. It's about solidifying who those people are and getting them to understand that having those policies implemented is going to require electing specific people, not just generic Democrats, but specific people to office at the local, state, and national level. There were some polls that indicated that some people thought Biden supported Medicare for all. That some people might have voted for him because they assumed that he and Bernie had similar policies. And so the tiebreaker was, who do I think can beat Trump? And they trusted Biden more. So it could be the case that we need to educate people on what Medicare for all is and why corporate Democrats don't support it. And how there are consequences to electing people like Joe Biden. Right? And maybe that's the next step. Because again, Medicare for all is popular. A Green New Deal is popular. They're quasi-universally popular with with Democrats. Right? Like 100%, right? 90% of Democrats support Medicare for all. 90 goddamn percent of the party supports Medicare for all. And a majority of the public support Medicare for all. So the issue's already popular. It's about educating people about how you actually get it. And you don't get it through Joe Biden. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. But it's like, it seems to me like that's a policy that's already popular. You don't need to mobilize people to like universal health care. You need to mobilize people about how to get it. Now, of course, in the U.S., and I will, to be fair to people, it's heavily gerrymandered, of course. Right? The U.S. system is gerrymandered. The House is gerrymandered, of course, but just the Senate exists as a gerrymandered body that overweighs white votes and rural votes. Now, I understand that gerrymandering is in the Constitution. That's by design. I know the House gerrymandering is just anti-democratic, basically, corruption. But the Senate is what it is. But the reality is also, how can you get enough people in the right parts of the country to organize too? And I think that's a big question. Can you get enough people in Idaho, Montana, the Dakotas, things like that? Can you get those people to actually support these policies and vote Democrat and vote for the right Democrats? Because you think about it, even without the filibuster, you got to get to a certain amount of senators if you want to pass Medicare for all. You need a certain amount of people in the House. House is doable. House is doable. But the Senate's going to be tough. John Bartlett said, should the left boycott the DNC convention? I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I would say that any sort of organized boycott won't necessarily work. So if you boycott a traditional convention, I guess less people show up and it makes it look bad. I guess hypothetically, if we all decided to boycott, their viewership would be down, and that would make Biden and Harris look bad because the ratings, quote unquote, for the event would be smaller. And then the media would say, well, Biden had such a small media turnout, and they wouldn't want that. On the other hand, I don't know what effect a boycott would have. I'm not sure. I think what you're seeing is that a lot of people who are delegates from the Bernie wing, from the progressive wing, have been opposing the Biden-Harris policy platform as much as they can, but I don't see a boycott necessarily as effective, especially to a digital event. I don't know what the effect is going to be. I don't think it would be negative necessarily, but I just think it's not really going to work, and it's not really going to be taken all that seriously. I don't know. And plus, I think it's important that the left watch it, and that, like, as much as we can, whether it's, you know, people like myself with a YouTube channel, or whether it's just every one of us individually on Twitter or whatnot, we need to be watching it to call out the lies. Like, when you see Joe Biden lie, when you see Kamala Harris lie, when you see the media lie about what Bernie is saying, we need to be active. Because if we're not, other people will be. And the narrative is already shaped against the left. Right? The narrative is already slanted against us. We don't need to do the work of the corporations for them by taking ourselves out of the conversation. So I guess my position would be against the boycott, but not militantly against a boycott. I would respect people who chose not to participate because they don't feel the process has legitimacy. So, I mean, Peter Dow, who of course was one of the most anti-Bernie voices from 2016, has now come full circle, and now he's more militant than Bernie in a lot of ways. Has said it's absurd that AOC gets less speaking time than John Kasich does at the convention, and I totally agree. Heart on my sleeves. How does Jesse have a chance? I'm not being facetious here. I frankly, I don't believe anybody has a chance but the two main party tickets. But hasn't the Green Party already nominated, or aren't they in the process of nominating Howie Hawkins? So would he run as an independent? And if he runs as an independent, hasn't he already missed the deadline to file as an independent in many of the states he would need to win to become president? It seems like he sort of missed the boat, right? Like, so I definitely, I don't know. I'm interested to see what people think. How many ballots is he currently on? Because, like, even Kanye right now, like, he's trying to get on ballots, maybe to help Trump, although the polling I've seen shows that he might actually help Biden slightly. Like, and he tried to get on one of the state's ballots, but his ballots got thrown, his signatures got thrown out. I don't... How many ballots is Jesse currently on? Like, I'm asking, like, how many ballots is he on? Okay, but how many ballots is he on right now? How many is he on? Like, I'm asking, is he on 0 right now? Because if he's on 0 right now, I'm going to be honest. It's got nothing either for or against Jesse. It's not going to happen, guys. If he's not on a single ballot right now, it's not going to happen. I'm going to be honest. He might be better than Biden and Trump. Honestly, I don't know a whole lot about Jesse Ventura. I honestly don't. He seems like he's one of these politically eclectic types that actually might have a couple of views that are actually not good, and I just don't know about them. All I'm saying, guys, is if he's on 0, it's not going to happen, guys. If he's on 0 ballots, it's not going to happen. It's August. It's not happening. HS says, do you think conservative provincial governments in Canada like Ontario or Alberta can be defeated? If so, what's the best way to defeat them? I mean, I think the best way to defeat governments like that is to let them do their stuff. I mean, you see it with Kenny and Ford. Rushed reopenings. Now you're seeing COVID-19 cases in Alberta. Now they're the worst in the country, and they weren't a few weeks and months ago. I think that you have to defeat them based on that. The polling is indicating that they could both maybe lose next election. The NDP is fairly close in Alberta, and one of the narratives, or one of the benefits of first past the post in Alberta is that it benefits the left, which is rare, right? Because in a lot of other parts, like in Ontario, it benefits conservatives because they have that vote efficiency in suburbia. But in Alberta, the conservatives absolutely dominate the rural areas. And so what happens is that if the NDP can just edge them out in Calgary and in Edmonton, or they need to win Edmonton big, but they can, and then just edge them out in Calgary, they can win a majority. Sort of like how in Manitoba, the NDP can win a government just in Winnipeg and a few northern seats. And like that's how it can be done, because those provinces are so centered population-wise on their one or two big cities. So the way you do it is you try to win back those urban conservative voters that voted last time for Kenny, but would consider voting for you. And you let Kenny win 90% of the rural Alberta ridings. It doesn't matter. First past the post is a broken system, but it might be the one way that Rachel Notley can get back to power. Use your vote efficiency in the big cities and rely on an inefficient vote for Kenny. They did, but to win a government, you don't need to win that many. You know, that was a massive victory. In a two-party system, you only need to win like 2 or 3 more seats than the Conservatives. So if you could sweep Edmonton and Calgary, that gets you a good of the ways there. I am not a Trudeau stan. I am, if anything, quite hostile to Trudeau. I have a lot of books on Pierre Trudeau, Trudeau's father, and I'm not necessarily a fan of his either. My book's critical, but I have a lot of books on him because I wrote my PhD dissertation on them. Yeah, so, I mean, like, yeah. I mean, we'll have to see. But look, people want to vote for Jesse Ventura. That's fine. That's just, he's not even on any ballots yet. He's not on any ballots yet. What is Jesse Ventura's position on Medicare for all? Like, actually. Let me look this up. Okay, he looks good on Medicare for all. He looks good on Medicare for all. Okay, good. Yeah. It's just sometimes I see people push progressive candidates, Tulsi, who actually don't support progressive policies. Right? It's like, oh, y'all got, you know, and they don't support Medicare for all, and they don't support a wealth tax. So, like, you know, it's good, but it's like, why didn't Jesse run in the Democratic primary? Or why didn't he run for the Green? It's just, it's not going to happen. It's too late. Ben asks, I actually liked WAP, the song. Male rappers talk about hoes all the time, but we never get the hoes, quote-unquote, point of view. It seems less objectifying this way to me. Yeah, Ben. So Ben's referring to the new song by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion that we covered on this channel, actually, in the context of Ben Shapiro absolutely mangling the lyrics, reading them out, and not seeing the feminist message in it. And look, not all feminists are going to agree with the expression of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion or other women that make similar videos, but I definitely see it as a legitimate form of feminist expression. Like, that's my viewpoint, and so I think it's actually quite a feminist expression. Yeah. Like, yeah, and I agree that male rappers, male artists in general get away with that kind of expression in a way that others don't. Like Taylor Swift, who does make a lot of songs about ex-boyfriends, but guys write songs about their love interests all the time. We talk about it more with Taylor Swift. Sanwal asks, what do you say to the people who think that under Jack Layton, the right wing of the NDP pushed the party right? Asking as an outsider myself. I mean, Jack Layton was part of that broad neoliberalization of the NDP in a lot of ways. Not in every way. In some ways, he made the party more inclusive and more progressive. He took key stands against war. He made the party much more welcoming to gay people. And he wasn't a neoliberal. He wasn't. But, you know, the NDP, he did try to bring the party to the relative center. That's my viewpoint. And that work was intensified under Tom Mulcair. And that project failed. Because, one, Canadians didn't want that. Members of the party didn't want that. And unlike Jack Layton, Mulcair is not actually likable. Like, Jack Layton was a likable person and a good, and people liked him inherently. They didn't like Tom Mulcair. Right? So yeah, I would say that Jack Layton was part of that movement of the NDP rightward. Less concerned with sharp taxes increases on the rich. Less concerned with nationalization. Less concerned with, building massive new social programs. Less concerned with a lot of these things. And I think Jagmeet Singh, and again, he's not done enough. I've been critical of Jagmeet from the left, and a lot of my viewers have. But Jagmeet Singh is the first NDP leader, I think since the Cold War, to actually move the party leftward, at least at the federal level. You know, and I think it's a good sign. And look, Jack did a lot for the NDP, but I didn't agree with his ideological vision. Dan says Jesse's more progressive than Bernie. The Greens blocked him out, but only 3 deadlines have passed. It's not. We need electors in Texas. Join us. Like, is the strategy to get Jesse on enough ballots to ensure that no one can win the Electoral College? Like, is that the strategy to win 1 or 2 states and then flip it to the House? Because that will get Trump elected. And look, I'm not a vote shamer. You want to vote Jesse because he's third party, it's fine. But what will happen if Jesse wins Electoral College votes? Remember this, is that if somebody cannot win an outright majority of the Electoral College, it doesn't automatically go to the first place person. It goes to the House of Representatives, and then the House of Representatives votes on it. But it's not the total amount of people in the House. It's by state. And because there are more red states than blue states, Republicans will pick Donald Trump if Jesse Ventura wins states. They will pick him. It's to win 41 states. Okay. Like, so he wants to get, how close is he to get on the California ballot? Like, again, like, I have real concerns here. We know MPP has reached out to Jesse to speak. Dan, thank you for the support there. Who's MPP again? I'm not sure who that is. If that's I'm not sure. Is that a political party? I'm not sure. Michael says, do you think the YouTube algorithm is burying leftist YouTube? There seems to be very slow growth across the channel as I watch. Yeah, YouTube has admitted to this. Not specifically necessarily left-wing YouTube or right-wing YouTube or even centrist tube necessarily. YouTube, ironically as it was, about the time I started, made a public change. They didn't hide this. They celebrated it. They started giving automatic privileges to the big news networks. So, Movement for People's Party. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks. So the idea is, okay. Sorry. We don't want fake news spreading. We want people to watch mainstream, quote unquote, reputable news. And they don't discriminate against left. So Fox News and MSNBC are both deemed credible. So it's not against the left, quote unquote, or the right necessarily. And so what they've done is they've made it so that it's harder to find non-official sources when you do YouTube searches. If you notice, Kyle Kulinski could put out a big video, but it might get outranked in searches by smaller videos from CNN, MSNBC, and those sorts of channels. Right? And so, when push comes to shove, they do that. It also limits the amount of times that limits the amount of time or frequency that my videos will follow my own video. Most of the time, and let me know in the comments, but most of the time when you watch one of my videos, is it not followed by like an MSNBC or a CBC or type video or a CNN video? Most of the time when I test my own content, because I usually like to run it and see how it looks on another account to make sure there are no issues, I notice that it defaults to another channel. Right? It defaults to another channel that's not my own, but nor is it often. Sometimes it is, but rarely. It's not David Dole or Kyle Kulinski or Mike Figueredo, who I know we share audiences. Like, I know a lot of people who watch me watch David, watch Kyle, watch Mike, watch, Rising, watch the Young Turks, whatever. Like, we're all part of the same broad bubble. Not everyone watches everybody, but everyone's sort of connected. And what should normally happen is that based on the quality of the video, they should be like, okay, this guy watches David Dole's Rational National, and this guy watches Christo Aivalis. He just watched a David video. Well, let's show him a Christo Aivalis video. Or show him another David video. And it doesn't do that as much. So yeah, what you're seeing is by design. They have limited the amount of organic spread political channels can get if they're covering issues that are overlapping with mainstream news. Some channels have been able to grow, like Vaush, I don't know. He's basically gone like up more than 100,000 subscribers in a few months. But he rarely covers directly electoral news like I do. He covers like general issues, and that doesn't overlap as much. So that's a big factor. Yeah, TMBS, yeah. Majority Report, yeah, guys, I don't want to leave anybody out. TMBS, Majority Report, 100%. In fact, I probably watch those guys more than I watch the Young Turks, for instance. I was just throwing out names, right? But, So yeah, it's not a 100% thing, but more often than not, whereas if you watch video game YouTube, they're much more likely to pump you the same channels over again. And so this does affect it. This definitely affects it. And so this is one of the reasons why, one of the things you can do to help channels like mine and the others is share our content. Like when I post something to Facebook, some of you are on my Facebook, please share it. When I post it on Twitter, please share it. Please share it yourself if you have the desire to, because that's becoming a way that I can actually get content out. If you think a video of mine would look good on Reddit, on certain subreddits, share it to Reddit. Like those can be places that the videos can get more shares and more eyeballs, because YouTube's algorithm rarely shows my content organically. And that's just the reality. Michael says, do you think... Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry, yeah. So, Michael, I hope that answers your question. Yes, by design, 100% YouTube is trying to limit the growth of political channels. I don't have any proof that it is a left or right-wing thing. Like, at least when it comes to electoral politics. People that cover the culture war can grow. Like, people that make videos on Ben Shapiro, either pro or negative, they can grow because MSNBC isn't making a lot of videos, or Fox News isn't making a lot of videos about Ben Shapiro. So it's when you compete with the news networks. It's one of the reasons why I might want to lean into making more videos about things like that, especially after the election, because I feel like I won't have to compete with the algorithm as much. Zeno, on Twitter, well, actually, let me share my Twitter. On Twitter, I probably talk more about Canadian politics on Twitter than I do here on YouTube. So let me throw that here. Yeah, I mean, like, look, every once in a while, they will suggest one of my videos. It happens. But more often than not, it doesn't. They'll put you to mainstream news. Because what YouTube wanted to stop. And look, it's not that I'm not sympathetic to some of their goals. But like, what used to happen was somebody would find Ben Shapiro. He's awful, but like, he's not QAnon. And then they would follow from Ben Shapiro, and then they would end up on like the worst parts of conservative subreddit of YouTube. And so what YouTube said is like, look, if they watch a Ben Shapiro video, what if we just funnel them back to Fox News or CNN or MSNBC? That's the goal. Ben says, Cardi B seems to understand a lot of millennial hardships. Maybe I'm biased. I also think it's ironic that Ben says it's anti-feminist when he, a white male, is telling a woman of color, what she should say and how she should say it. Yeah, 100%. It's also ironic because, like, Ben's sister, Abby Shapiro, has made, like, her living off of telling women that it's good to be wives that are submissive to your husbands and good to stay at home and be barefoot and pregnant. And look, if you choose to do that, that's fine. That's fine. Like, you don't have to... You could be a stay-at-home mother and wife and be a good feminist, 100%. But, like, to paint that as, like, the problem with women is that they've become too feminist, and then say that, oh, the feminists are ruining things. Well, it's like, Ben, you don't give a damn about feminism. Yeah. And yeah, Cardi B, I mean, look, she supported Bernie for a reason. Like, and yeah, is she always articulating her political views as clearly as I would? Maybe not. She's not a politician, though, and she's not a commentator. I think Cardi B understands how a lot of people like her really fundamentally never got a chance. And that she was lucky. And that, like, she realizes that she wasn't just successful and therefore everyone else like her just has to pull up their bootstraps. She understands that, like, the system is rigged against a lot of poor, racialized people from, like, immigrants and people who are the children of immigrants, things like that. And so, yeah, I think Cardi B definitely has that political message. Peggy says, I noticed when you were a commentator / guest in mainstream, your YouTubes will pop up. That's interesting. I mean, that could be, like, whether it's my own YouTube or whether it's me popping up on there, that would make sense because you're being associated with mainstream media, right? Like, if, for instance, I was to hypothetically get a YouTube YouTube channel that was affiliated with the CBC, it's not going to happen, guys. Don't hold your breath. Then when I posted stuff there, YouTube would give it much more algorithmic reach. It would be classified as a news channel and be given front page status on the news tab. And it would be shown to people more than my current content. Even if this content performed worse. Even if that content, in terms of how many views it got, how long people watched it, did they like it or not like it, things like that. Sean says, shameless plug to check out Justice Greens, a grassroots group trying to get a socialist to win the Canadian Green Party leadership. Thanks, Christo. Sean, thanks so much for that. For those who don't know, the Green Party in Canada is sort of an eco-capitalist party. They're what I would call probably Canada's most centrist party, honestly. Like, the Liberals are center-right, the Conservatives are, like, center-right to right. But the Greens are center-left on some things, but then center-right on others. And for a long time, people have said, well, the Green Party in Canada can't be truly environmentalist if it's not anti-capitalist. And they're right. And so there's a couple people running, Haddad and Lascaris, who many are putting forward as, at the very least, anti-neoliberal voices. And so there are some people organizing to elect the socialist to the Green Party leadership. From my perspective, that's just me personally. I'm a member of the NDP. I've held electoral offices in the NDP. So I won't be, joining personally in any efforts to vote in another party's leadership election, because to do so, I would have to renounce my membership in the NDP, and I won't do that. But obviously, I wish all the best to left-wing candidates running for the Green leadership. Because again, if you're ever going to see a Green NDP merger, it's only going to happen if the Greens go left. With Elizabeth May types, they'd be more likely to merge into the Liberals. But with like Dimitri Lascaris, there's at least a chance you could build a more unified, working-class Green Party. And John Bartlett said, hey, I'm going to head out. John, sorry I didn't get to that right away. He might already be gone. But thanks so much for the support, John. If you're watching this later on in the future, thanks so much. I haven't held an elected office like a member of parliament or anything, or a city council. But I was for a while the vice president of the Kingston and the Islands NDP. Basically my riding association. I was the vice president of both the federal and the provincial one. And before that, I held other roles on the executive. So I was on my local riding executive probably for about 6 or 7 years. Probably from about 2013 to last year. And I didn't leave out of any kind of disagreement or anything like that. It was just, I'm busy now with a baby and with the YouTube channel. I don't have as much time on my plate. Yeah, that's so, being somebody like that, I won't join another party. And for me personally, I've never done that thing where I join another party to vote in their leadership election, because I'm not a member of that party. And I don't feel comfortable doing that personally. As a personal judgment, I feel like that's not right. If you're not really a member of the party, you shouldn't join the party to influence the party. That's my view. People will disagree. And I'm not judging anybody who does it. It's just that's my personal thing. Yeah, people are talking about David Dole. David Dole did run for the Greens in a riding where, the Greens didn't really have a whole lot of success in that region of Ontario. But David, I would say, has always been on the left of that Green Party when he was a part of it. And I think David Dole has moved more stridently towards socialism over the last couple of years, as somebody who knows him well and has been on his show and listened to his radio show when he still had it. I would say David is more clearly now somebody who would be more in the NDP. But I don't know if he has formal party membership. But yes, David Dole did run as a candidate for the Green Party in 2015, officially. And he finished, I think he did okay for a Green Party. It's just in Canada, for those who don't know, the Green Party only has 3 seats, and outside of 4 or 5 ridings, they're not competitive. So, it's nothing against David. It's just where he ran, people don't vote Green. David and I got in touch when we, I forget the exact. What happened in general is I wrote an article, I believe it was an article I wrote for the Washington Post, because I've written for the Washington Post a few times, because ironic as it is, they're one of the better places to publish left-wing articles about Canada. They actually do publish progressive voices, whereas many of our own newspapers won't. So I wrote a piece for the Washington Post, and then David at the time was hosting a radio show. David at the time was hosting a radio show, and messaged me on Twitter and basically said, hey, I'd love to have you on my radio show to talk about the news, like using your article as a jumping off point. And then that's how I went on his radio show. And I think I did that one more time. And so when I decided to start making YouTube videos, I now knew this guy that had, this very large YouTube channel, right? Even at that point, he was over 250,000, I think, at the time. So he was very gracious at helping, showing me the basic ropes of here's how you set up a shot and things like that. But also having me on his show when my channel was really small. So, things like that. So that's how we met, basically. I think we were following each other on social media. Just, we were both like progressive guys from Canada. And yeah, he just sent me a note to talk about the article. Yeah. But no, I mean, people have talked about, should I run for office or not? Like, again, it's something that I've considered, but it's about like as you note, it's about timing, having a young son, Brianna's obviously very busy in her own right. My honestly, guys, my view is that, like, I haven't ruled out running, but my honest view is that if anybody from this household runs, it might be Brianna before myself. Brianna has been approached by the NDP to run in a local riding, but chose not to for a variety of reasons. She's also been approached by people to maybe run for city council. So I'd say Brianna might have the brighter future in electoral politics than I do. Also, this YouTube channel, I've said a lot of things that will definitely get clipped by political opponents to be used against me. I would have to do, like, whenever you run for office, you have to scrub your social media, right? You have to, but like for myself, if I ever ran for office, guys, it would take me months to go through all the stuff I've written and said on the internet that to see if, like, I would get disqualified or something. Byron says, I wish there was a way to vote against Trump instead of for Hillary or Joe. Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a way. I mean, a couple options the U.S. could do. One I don't think would actually work, but, like, you could do it, is a none of the above option, which is that if none of the above wins, you redo the election, and those people can't run again. I've heard some people muse about that. So all the people on the ballot, you say none of the above. If that none of the above wins, you redo the election and only new people can run. And you keep doing it. Now, I don't know how feasible that is, or even if that's constitutional, but that's something to consider. Another option would be a ranked ballot. Now, a ranked ballot doesn't really let you vote against anyone, but a ranked ballot would hypothetically at least allow you to vote for your first choices and then not have to worry about electing the worst option. So, for instance, Jesse gets on the ballot, let's say. You can mark him number 1 on your ballot. And make it known, I support Jesse Ventura or Howie Hawkins or whoever. Number 1. But I don't want to help Trump. So, with my number 2, I'm going to put Hillary, yeah, I did it myself. I'm going to put Joe Biden, number 2. Then you don't have to rank everybody. And then you're done. And so you've not given Trump your vote, and you've been able to vote for your favorite candidate without helping your least favorite candidate. Now, ranked ballot isn't a good system for the congressional level. That's where proportional representation should come in, because the proportional representation deals with distortion of the vote not reflecting the people's will. But for a presidential election where you're only electing one office, ranked ballot is a good option. It says here that Jean-Luc says, I love when progressives help progressives. Look, I think it's important, and it's something that I have to do more of, and I think lots of people have to do more of, is like, if YouTube isn't going to, through the algorithm, allow our channels to grow organically, then we have to help one another. We have to go on one another's shows. We have to share each other's articles and videos and stuff on social media. We have to reference one another in our videos and in our posts on social media, because I think that's one way to get people to see new audiences. Because many of you found me not through the algorithm. Some of you did, but many of you found me through David Dole or when I went on the Michael Brooks show, or when I co-hosted, when I filled in for Mike Figueredo. So like that wasn't organic through the algorithm. That was me going on someone's show. So I've done, my little part. There's some, if there's new YouTubers, I've tried to showcase their content. If you look at my homepage, you'll see some of my favorite channels, including a couple new, smaller Canadian channels that have less than a couple hundred subscribers, as well as some bigger channels that I'm a fan of. And I think it's important you do these little things to help one another. People said they do you like they did Cenk, or Jenk, sorry. Yeah, maybe. That could certainly happen. And look, I was critical of Cenk and I think the criticisms of him with the union were legitimate. Like, I think that he was wrong to request a secret ballot. I do. The Bernie position is clear. Once voters sign the cards, the union should be automatically recognized. And so Cenk should have said, in the spirit of Bernie Sanders' labor policy, I'm going to automatically recognize my workers. I'm not going to demand an additional vote. Because Bernie's going to ban that additional vote. And he should, because that additional vote gives a window for employers to intimidate their workers to bust the union. Now, I'm not saying Cenk did that. In fact, I'm pretty sure he didn't. But in simply demanding the vote, it was an act of trying to dissuade unionism. So, there are legitimate criticisms. But most of what they were saying about Cenk was BS. Of course it was. It was things that are like legitimate things to criticize him on, but from 30 years ago that he's already apologized for and he hasn't done since, or 20 years ago or whatever. So yeah, that's always a risk when you have a big media footprint, whether it's in writing or in video. You give your opponents a lot of ammunition. If I was to run for office, my opponents would have tons of ammunition via all my YouTube videos and whatnot. Dave says, okay, I'm not gonna repeat this because I disagree with this. This is not a healthy narrative, guys, at all. Somebody in the comments notes suggests that Kamala Harris provided sexual favors to get the VP slot. That's not appropriate. That's not appropriate discourse. Kamala Harris is a neoliberal monster. She has treated people awfully. I think she's awful. But I'm not going to engage in misogyny to do that. Don't imply that she had to have sex with men or what have you to get this VP slot. Yeah, she sold her soul like a lot of people would have. But it's not in like a gender term. Let's be fair here. That's not appropriate. That's not a progressive thing to do, is to shame sex workers or things like that to try to get one on Kamala. It's not appropriate. Yes, TYT is now unionized, and that's great. That's great. But the concern was, again, the way, and it's the same process in Canada. And our process sucks too. At least it is in most provinces. So, the way it works is, workers will apply for a union, will apply to form a union, usually covering a defined bargaining unit. And then the workers will get signatures of the workers in that bargaining unit, say like the employees at TYT. When they've gotten about, it depends on the specific state or province, about half of the cards signed, then they'll call for a vote. If the employer doesn't automatically recognize the union, then there will be a secret ballot vote in which the union, which all the members of the union, even if they didn't sign the card, can vote. All the people of the proposed unit can vote yes or no. If no wins, there's no union. If yes wins, the union is officially recognized as the bargaining agent for everyone in the workplace. Now, in the US, you also have right to work. It complicates things in some states, but leave that aside. What Bernie's plan is, and what the NDP's plan is in Canada as well, is that the process should be automatic. That voting period is a time window for intimidation to bust the union. So, what it should be is, let's say you got to get 55% of the workers to sign a card. If you can get 55% of workers in that workplace to basically say they want a union, the union should be automatically recognized. In Canada, we call it card check certification. And it was a key plank in Bernie's labor policy. And when a progressive news network had their workers at the TYT union come to them with the card signed, all in order, none of the cards were forged or anything like that, under Bernie's system, Cenk would not have been allowed to ask for a vote. And so from my perspective, again, with full respect to TYT and the work they do, the right thing to do would have been to immediately recognize the union and say, hey, when Bernie's president, that's what it's going to be. I, as the founder of TYT, Cenk, have already endorsed Bernie Sanders for president. I know he had to pull back his endorsement, but he was backing Bernie for president. He should live by Bernie's labor policies. Ben asks, thoughts on Alex Morris being sex-shamed? IMO, if progressives become as unyielding and as apologetic as Trump is, the mainstream media wouldn't have any ammunition. I mean, okay. So the basic story here, and I gotta be careful here because it's all in flux, is that a young gay man who is a mayor in is it Massachusetts? Is primarying somebody, a corporate Democrat, and there was a controversy that he was hitting on students and had sex with students at a university where he taught, but he never taught any of these students, and he, at least in some of these cases, was no longer teaching when it happened. And so the argument became that he was creeping and being predatory on these students. Now, for a while, we didn't have the full information, so people were divided. A lot of people thought that folks were being prudish, and then some other folks thought, even if it's not technically against any laws or rules, professors shouldn't sleep with students, even if they're in totally different parts of the university. And so there was that whole debate. But then what just happened, and it was released a little bit ago, was it Ryan Grimm? Let me see if I can find this right here. Let me see if I can find it. Ryan Grimm. Okay, so Ryan Grimm from The Intercept wrote a piece that basically said that college Democrat chats reveal year-old plan to engineer and leak Alex Morse accusations. And so basically what happened, Holyoke, Massachusetts. Thank you, Doug, for the context. Basically what happened is they tried to purposely paint this man as a gay predator. So this is a guy who was meeting young people. They were younger than him, but all adults, right? And he was meeting some of them on apps like Tinder. And he was having sexual relations with some of these people, always consensual. And not with students, not with his own students, not with anybody he had any sort of power dynamic over. And it became this whole thing that he was like predatory and all this. And I definitely think in this case it was premeditated. That they knew that they were going to, in a sense, try to like, they were going to try to say this predatory gay man is hurting college students. He's not actually a real progressive. So, I mean, right now, it really does look like they were, it really does look like this was a setup. It really does look like that. Michael says, or asks, or sorry, says here. Says and asks. I think it's a question and a comment. Okay, Kamala, who could never win on her own, will be tough to beat in 2024. Do you think progressives can stop her, or are we out of power for the next decade? I mean, again, it depends, right? I think that, what if Trump loses, if Trump wins again, then it's open field again. And I'm not saying I want that, but I'm saying like that's, like, let's not, I think Biden and Harris are going to win, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee at all, right? So, let's just assume, we're assuming, we're not guaranteeing. But if she if Biden wins and then hands the reins to her in 2024, she will be hard to primary. It will not be a guaranteed cakewalk, but it's going to be hard to primary her, I think. Because she's going to be treated as a quasi-incumbent, not a full incumbent. It's not going to be because technically, you guys, I don't know if you saw this, but technically, Donald Trump got primaried by some people. He got primaried. Didn't work, but he did. So she won't be quite that locked in. It won't be quite that simple. But I do think that it will be tricky to beat her. Now, it depends. Was the administration unpopular? Was she unpopular? Is there somebody with a huge name that can take her down? I'm not sure. But I definitely think that she is now the inside track. If they win, she's got an absolute fundamental advantage to get the nomination. It's going to be hard to defeat her. Not impossible, but difficult. Kamala might not have a base now, but don't forget, one of the things that really hamstrung Kamala and Cory Booker was that African American voters, older African Americans in particular, just were with Biden the whole time. The whole time. Through thick and thin, they never left Joe Biden. Young black people moved around a little bit more. And before South Carolina, they were with Bernie. But older black folks never left Joe Biden. And so it was really hard for Kamala Harris and Cory Booker if one of their paths was to run and win support from the African American community. They never really had that opportunity. And so the question can be, does she have a base? Maybe not. Or maybe her base is the Joe Biden base. I don't know. Or as vice president, does she build a base? Remember, Joe Biden failed to run for president in 2008, and actually he failed before. But now he had a base. His base became the Obama base in some ways. So you can build one if you associate yourself with another brand and you get a national profile and whatnot. Like, the question again is going to be, like, what's the narrative? What's the movement? Like, for instance, what I can almost guarantee is not going to happen is that, like, if there is a challenger to Kamala, it's going to be a small field. I expect if there is a primary in 2024 in the context of Kamala's running as Joe Biden's vice president and Biden's retiring, I think it's a smaller field, at least in terms of viable candidates. I think it's much more like 2016, where essentially it was a two-person race. So you might see one dedicated challenger to Kamala Harris. And that's why that could be an opportunity for the left, because I don't think the party establishment is going to challenge Kamala. She's VP for a reason. All the party bigwigs could at least tolerate her. Maybe she wasn't everyone's first pick, but enough of them were like, okay, I'm fine with Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, go with it. We're okay with her. Not the case with a lot of other people, obviously. And so if in 2024 she's running for president, then I gotta feel that the party establishment's behind her. Biden obviously is probably endorsing her. He's probably going to give her the blessing. And then it's going to be, does the left field a candidate? And that's the question. Do you do that? Do you take the risk? Does AOC take a risk at running and getting and losing? And she could lose big. She could lose big. And so is it worth it? I don't know. These are questions that need to be asked. Do you run another left candidate who's maybe got less of a future chance of winning out of principle? Somebody who maybe doesn't have the presidential potential of AOC, but is running to be an issue bringer, like an issue raiser. And some people are saying, well, what if Biden loses? Well, if Biden loses, then the whole bet's off. Then you're going to have a primary very much like this one, where there's going to be a whole bunch of people running on the right, the center, the left. It's going to be a clusterfuck. Like it's going to be crazy. Right? It's going to be crazy. Very similar to this one, I think. Ben says, what if Dems win Congress but lose the presidency? The right focused on down ballot stuff to get their agenda pushed regardless. We could try that. I mean, what I think is the most likely scenario. What I think you think is the most likely AOC will be just barely old enough. Just barely old enough. By a few weeks, really. Like, she's barely be 35. She easily be the youngest president in history. By like a ton. So it's, like, there's a lot of reasons why AOC might wait. AOC might wait a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? But Ben asks, what if the Dems win the Congress and lose the presidency? Here's what I think is the most likely... option or outcome is that the Democrats win the presidency and the House but lose the Senate. That's the most likely outcome right now. Because if you look at the House polling, it's looking good for the Democrats. They'll likely win the House. Maybe they'll gain some, lose some, whatever. It doesn't matter. They got a buffer there. They'll win the House. Then there's the presidency. Looking good for Biden. Again, not a guarantee, but it's looking good today. Win the presidency. But the nature of the Senate is that it's harder for the Democrats to win the Senate than the Republicans because there's more red states than blue states, even though there are more people in those blue states. But the fact of the matter, and some of the Republicans that are like Trump, in states that Trump is struggling in, some of the Republican incumbents are still hanging on. So there's a chance that Trump could really take a step back, but some of his incumbents might be able to hold on their own personal brands. And just like the amount of seats the Democrats, they need to have a really good Senate campaign. So I do think it's very possible. And then I don't know what happens. Honestly, it's probably a ton of gridlock. Because the Democrats will have the House like they do right now, and they'll have the presidency, but Mitch McConnell will likely still be in control in the Senate. And then I don't know. Now the question then becomes, does Mitch McConnell prevent appointing a Supreme Court judge for the entire 4 years? Does he try to basically not allow Biden to appoint a judge at all for 4 years? Does he use his Senate majority to effectively shut down the Supreme Court nominees for as long as possible? And that's going to be an interesting question. Remember, he did it for a year, basically, to prevent Obama from putting Merrick Garland on the court. What if he did it for 4 years? That will be interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure. So, guys, I'm going to wrap up tonight. Usually we finish up around 10:30, 10:15, 10:30. This was fantastic. Before everyone goes, just a few things. One, thank you all, obviously, to everyone here who watched, who participated, who asked some fantastic questions, gave some great comments. I dropped the link to my Discord down there. I'm going to drop the link to my Twitter if you want to follow me on Twitter. It's a great place to follow me. To get updates on the channel and just my thoughts on all sorts of issues. Do check that out. Great sources to follow me. If you want, you can find me on Facebook as well. Facebook is really good. I share a lot of my content there. So if you ever miss a video for whatever reason, you might see it there. Follow me on those sources. A lot of people always ask me how they can support the channel. There's a few ways. One, watching and sharing the content. I know sometimes YouTube won't show my content to you, but if you go to my channel every day, if you go to the page, you can watch videos there and you can see them. So do that. Like, for instance, I posted a video earlier today after the stream. Go check that video out. It's on Cory Booker. Standing up to Trump's racism. I'm not a huge fan of Booker, but he did the right thing today, so I made a video about that. If for people who want to support the channel on a one-time basis, I have a link to my PayPal in the description, and for people who want to support the channel on an ongoing basis, and I know not everyone has the means, especially now, but for that, you can support me on my Patreon. So guys, I do these streams every week, Wednesday, 8 o'clock. Sometimes I do additional streams. I try to give notice, but those are more ad hoc. And I post a video, at least one video on the channel every day. So if you're new, click the subscribe button. If you have subscribed, do click that little bell and click that and click all notifications. That way you should get notified for... YouTube's not perfect, but you'll get notified for most of my videos. So, this was great, guys. Again, I will see you next week. Have a good one. Stay safe. And be sure to follow me on all my socials. And I'll see you around. People saying I need to join TikTok. Maybe, but I don't want to be laughed at for being an old man. So I'll consider it. Have a good one, guys. Thank you so much. Sean, yeah. I'll definitely be doing streams for the DNC. And maybe not every night, like maybe I will, but I'll have to see what my schedule looks like with Brianna. But I'll definitely be doing streams for the debates, like after, probably not during the debates because I don't want to get my stream copyright struck, but at the very least after the debates, I'll be doing like a post-debate live stream and things like that, 100%. Okay, guys, have a good one. Thanks so much.